locked in a tower, her freedom stolen, a prince climbing her golden braids. We all know the fairy tale. But what if Rapunzel was real? What if her story wasn't invented, but remembered, a shadow of something far older and far darker? A real woman, imprisoned for her beliefs, her long hair shorn in punishment, and what if her bones still lie beneath an altar to this very day? The fairy tale buried the truth, but not deep enough. Welcome back, darklings. Before we unravel the truth behind the real Rapunzel, let's remind ourselves of the tale we all think we know. Once upon a time, a husband and wife lived in a modest cottage that stood beside a high-walled garden, a garden owned by a witch. One day, the wife fell pregnant, and with the child came a craving so fierce it bordered on obsession, not for meat or sweet things, but for a single herb. It grew in that forbidden garden, nestled among thorns and wildflowers, rampion, or as it was sometimes called, Rapunzel. She wanted nothing else, and refused all other food. As the days passed, the woman began to waste away. Fearing for her life, her husband climbed the wall under the cover of night and stole a handful of the herb. But the witch caught him. Her eyes glowed like coals. He begged for mercy, and the witch, smiling, agreed he could take as much rampion as he liked, in exchange for the child his wife carried. When the baby was born, the sorceress came as promised. She named the girl Rapunzel and carried her away. Rapunzel grew into a child of otherworldly beauty, with hair like spun sunlight. But when she turned 12, the witch took her deep into the forest and locked her in a tower. There were no stairs, no door, just a single circular room at the top and one high window. There she remained. Each day the sorceress would come and call, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." And Rapunzel would uncoil her braid long enough to reach the forest floor. The witch would climb it, hand over hand, to reach her. Years passed. One day a prince rode through the forest and heard Rapunzel singing, light and pure like a silver bell echoing through the trees. He couldn't see her, only hear her. He returned again and again, drawn by her song. Then, one day, he saw the sorceress call up to the tower and watched as she climbed the golden braid. The prince waited until she was gone. Then, heart racing, he stepped forward and called, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." Thinking it was the witch, she obeyed, and the prince climbed up to her. They fell in love. He returned to her each night, and together they made a plan. He would bring her silk, one strand at a time, so she could weave a ladder and escape. They would ride away far from the tower, far from the woman who had stolen her life. But the escape never came. One morning, Rapunzel, innocent and curious, asked the sorceress why her clothes had grown so tight around the waist. Her belly, she said, had begun to swell, though she didn't know why. The witch's eyes narrowed, her voice turned to ice. "Wicked child," she hissed. "What is this I hear? I thought I had hidden you from the world, and yet you have betrayed me." She seized Rapunzel by her hair, raised a pair of shears and cut the braid clean from her head. Then she cast the girl out into the wilderness to fend for herself. That night, when the prince arrived and called for Rapunzel, the sorceress let down the severed braid. He climbed, smiling. But it was not Rapunzel who waited at the top. "Aha!" the witch cried. "You came for your darling, but the bird is flown and sings no more. The cat has caught her and will scratch out your eyes as well." In despair, the prince threw himself from the tower. He fell into a bed of thorns. Though he survived, the thorns pierced his eyes, and he was left blind. For years the prince wandered through forests and wastelands, sightless, hopeless, clinging only to the memory of her voice. And then, one day, on the wind, he heard it. The same singing that had once called to him from the tower. Faint, sweet, unmistakable. He followed the sound, and he found Rapunzel. She ran to him, tears streaming down her cheeks. As they embraced, 2 tears fell into his eyes, and his sight was restored. There, by her side, were 2 children, a boy and a girl, the twins she had given birth to, alone in the wilderness. They returned to his kingdom, Rapunzel, the prince, and their children, and this time they were free. But not every version ends so neatly. The story you just heard was the version recorded by the Brothers Grimm in their first volume of children's and household tales. Their aim was simple: to preserve the old folk tales of Germany, stories passed down through generations by word of mouth. But unexpectedly, their book became popular with families and young children. In later editions, therefore, the story of Rapunzel was softened. The prince now proposed marriage the very night he met her, and Rapunzel no longer gave herself away with a swelling belly, but by accidentally mentioning the prince to the witch. But long before the Grimms set pen to paper, others had told this tale, and their versions were stranger and darker. In 1634, the Italian writer Giambattista Basile published a story called Petrosinella. Just like Rapunzel, the girl is taken from her parents, locked in a tower, and lets down her long braids so her captor can climb up to her. But this time, it's not a witch, it's an ogress. And Petrosinella isn't passive. She's clever, and she escapes. With the help of 3 magical acorns, one that becomes a snarling dog, one a lion, and the last a ravenous wolf, she creates distractions to stop the ogress chasing her. Then, in 1698, French author Charlotte Rose de Caumont de la Force wrote Persinette, a more romantic tale on the surface, but beneath the sweetness lies something far more unsettling. It was Persinette that first introduced the most haunting elements of the story we now call Rapunzel, the girl's secret pregnancy, the villain's deception leading to the prince's fall and blinding, the twin children born in exile, and the miraculous tears that bring back his sight. This wasn't a tale for children. It was a story of desire, consequence, and the price of longing. And at the root of it all, quite literally, was the herb. Petrosinella and Persinette both mean parsley. Rapunzel, or rampion, comes from Campanula rapunculus, a wild European bellflower. Its leaves were once eaten like spinach, its pale roots crisp and white like radishes. But in craving it, the mother lost everything, a hunger that doomed her unborn child. It calls to mind Eve before the fall, who reached for something forbidden and paid the price. But behind the fairy tale may lie a real woman. Her story echoes with defiance, and her body, they say, still remains. Her name was Barbara, the daughter of a wealthy nobleman devoted to the old gods. She lived in the 3rd century, during the reign of Emperor Maximian, in the city of Heliopolis, now known as Baalbek, in modern-day Lebanon. She was intelligent, devout, and beautiful. When her father attempted to arrange her marriage to a nobleman from Persia, Barbara refused, and for that defiance, he locked her in a tower within their home. But instead of breaking her will, the solitude only deepened it. Alone in the tower, Barbara converted to Christianity, rejecting the beliefs of her father. But she didn't remain silent. While her father was away, she instructed builders working on a new bathhouse to make a small but symbolic change. She had them add a 3rd window to the south-facing wall, a representation of the Holy Trinity. When her father returned and saw what she had done, he flew into a rage. Barbara was arrested and brought before the Roman authorities. They ordered her tortured. She was beaten, burned, and her skin was torn with iron hooks. Still, she would not recant. Before her execution, her long hair was shorn as a final humiliation. And then it was her own father who led her to a hilltop and beheaded her. Later, he died suddenly, said to have been struck down by a bolt of lightning. Barbara was buried by a Christian named Valentinus. Her tomb was said to be a place of miracles. She was remembered as a martyr, and her story endured for centuries. But there's a problem. Some say she never existed at all. Her earliest known biography doesn't appear until the 7th century, long after her supposed death in the 3rd. It was during this time that her tale was spread across Europe, retold, embellished, and canonized in texts like the Golden Legend, a medieval bestseller that made saints into symbols. Over the centuries, fragments of Barbara's legend may have seeped into local folklore, evolving, blending, and helping to shape the tale we now call Rapunzel. In 1969, the Catholic Church quietly removed St. Barbara's feast day from the official calendar, citing too little historical evidence. And yet, her timing aligns with the period of documented Christian persecution. The Lebanese still celebrate her every year, dressing in costume, baking sweets, and telling her story. Her city, her father's role, the bathhouse, they're all grounded in a real time and place. Bathhouses were a cornerstone of Roman daily life, especially among the elite, and just beyond Barbara's city of Baalbek stands a Roman nymphaeum, a monumental fountain complex built around a natural spring. Carved into the hillside, with a cistern and the figure of a goddess etched in stone, it echoes the sacred water sites of the ancient world. Some believe this could be the very bathhouse from Barbara's story, or at least the kind of place where such a legend could take root. Perhaps it was the story of this local goddess, carved into stone centuries before, that was later absorbed, reshaped, and Christianized into the figure we now know as St. Barbara. All of it could be just legend, of course, but then there's her body. According to tradition, Barbara's body was moved to Constantinople in the 6th century, and then, in 1108, her relics were given as part of a royal dowry. The daughter of the Byzantine Emperor Alexius Komnenos married a Rus's prince and took the saint's body with her to Kiev. The relics were enshrined in a church and never left. Today that body still rests beneath the golden dome of St. Vladimir's Cathedral, encased in glass, prayed to by the faithful. Centuries after the church declared her story uncertain, her body remains. You can see it. You can visit it. So if Barbara never existed, whose body is this? Whoever this woman was, her body was considered sacred enough, valuable enough, to be given as part of a royal marriage alliance. But what if Rapunzel's story isn't just linked to saints and martyrs? What if it's older still? Because across cultures and centuries, stories of long-haired women locked away, guarded, shorn, worshipped, keep appearing. In the 10th century Persian epic, the Shahnameh, the noblewoman Rudaba falls in love with Prince Zal. Unable to reach her, he gazes up at her tower, so Rudaba lets down her long black hair, inviting him to climb it. But Zal refuses, not because he isn't tempted, but because he fears he might hurt her, so instead he uses a rope. A moment of tenderness in ancient literature, and one of the earliest known hair ladder motifs. Then there's Sif, in Norse mythology, a goddess whose flowing golden hair was her pride, until Loki crept in and cut it off while she slept. In penance, he commissioned the dwarves to forge her new hair, spun from threads of real gold. But many scholars believe Sif's hair symbolised more than beauty. They see it as representing golden wheat, ripening fields, and the ancient rhythms of growth and harvest. Sif has long been associated with fertility, family, and the sacred bond of marriage. And then, there's something stranger still. The Brothers Grimm, yes, those Grimms, pointed out that in old poetic language gold was sometimes referred to as Sif Ya Hadra, literally Sif's hair. But more curiously, they also pointed out that there exists a plant known as Hadda Sifjar, literally Sif's hair again, now identified as Polytrichum aureum, a golden moss-like herb. Which brings us back to Rapunzel, also named after a plant, and defined by her golden hair. Could the fairy tale be rooted in this older Norse myth? And then there's Danae. In Greek mythology, she was the daughter of King Acrisius of Argos. A prophecy warned him that his own grandson would one day kill him. To escape his fate, he locked Danae away, far from the world of men. In some versions it was a sealed chamber or a burial tomb. In others, it was a tower. But Zeus found her, not as a man, but as a shower of golden rain slipping through the cracks in the ceiling. Danae became pregnant, and from that union came Perseus, the hero who would eventually fulfill the prophecy and bring about his grandfather's death. Across myth and history this motif repeats. A girl is hidden away, to keep her pure, to stop a prophecy, to control her fate. But isolation doesn't offer protection. In the end, the very thing they tried to prevent still happens. It's part of something far older, and it slips into another fairy tale you thought you knew. Sleeping Beauty, where a sleeping maiden, a cursed prophecy, and a prince who isn't always welcome come together in one of the strangest origin stories of them all. Click here to watch it now. See you in a future video.